There are moments when 1 second can destroy a reputation, and the next 30 can reveal a lifetime of truth. The executive boardroom on the 47th floor overlooked downtown Chicago, where morning sunlight reflected from endless glass towers, turning the skyline into a sea of silver. Inside, silence carried a different kind of weight. 12 board members sat around an impossibly long walnut table. Every chair was occupied. Every tablet glowed with financial reports. Every face reflected confidence earned through power, success, and years of difficult decisions. At the head of the table stood David Sinclair, 40 years old, calm, impeccably dressed. The billionaire CEO had built Sinclair Dynamics into one of the fastest-growing technology companies in America. Yet the room never feared his voice. They feared his silence. He adjusted a single page in front of him. "Let's begin." The quarterly meeting officially started. No one noticed the elevator doors opening at the far end of the executive hallway. No one noticed the woman walking toward the boardroom with hurried steps, clutching a worn canvas bag against her side. Victoria Hughes looked nothing like someone who belonged on the executive floor. Her navy cardigan showed faint signs of years of careful washing. Comfortable sneakers echoed softly across polished marble. Loose strands of chestnut hair framed a face marked not by anger, but by exhaustion, the kind carried quietly by parents who measured every day in responsibilities instead of hours. She wasn't there to make a scene. She wasn't looking for attention. She was looking for someone. Outside the conference room, 2 security officers exchanged uncertain glances as she approached. "Ma'am, this meeting is private." "I know." Her voice remained remarkably steady. "I only need 30 seconds. I'm sorry. You can't go inside." Victoria looked beyond them, through the narrow glass beside the door. Her breathing slowed. Then she saw him, David Sinclair. Without another word, she reached for the handle. The door swung open. Every conversation stopped. 12 executives turned at once. Even the presentation screen seemed frozen in place. Security reacted immediately. "Ma'am, you can't." Victoria kept walking. 1 step, then another. Every pair of eyes followed her as she crossed the room toward the CEO. David lifted his gaze from the financial report, surprised but composed. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The distance between them disappeared. Victoria raised one trembling hand. A sharp sound echoed through the boardroom. No shouting followed. No chaos. Only complete silence. The room itself seemed to forget how to breathe. One director slowly stood from his chair. Another instinctively reached for his phone before lowering it again. Someone whispered, "My God." The security officers rushed forward. "Ma'am, step back." No one understood what they had just witnessed. No one understood why a woman who looked gentle enough to apologize after accidentally bumping into a stranger would walk into one of the most powerful board meetings in the country and do something that would undoubtedly change her life forever. David never reached for his face. He never raised his voice. He simply looked at Victoria, not with anger, not with humiliation, but with quiet confusion, as though searching for an answer no one else had thought to ask. Victoria's breathing trembled. Tears gathered in her eyes but refused to fall. She slowly reached into her canvas bag. Several directors stepped backward. One security officer moved between her and the CEO. "It's okay," David said softly. 2 simple words. Nothing more. The entire room froze again. Victoria pulled out her phone. Her fingers shook as she unlocked the screen. Then she looked directly into David's eyes. "You need to see what happened 30 seconds before I walked in." No one moved. The silence inside the boardroom became almost tangible, stretching from one end of the walnut table to the other. Every executive seemed suspended between disbelief and uncertainty, waiting for someone else to decide what happened next. Victoria held her phone with both hands. "I am not asking anyone to believe me," she said quietly. "I am asking you to watch." One of the security officers stepped forward again. "Sir, should we escort her out?" David never looked away from Victoria. "Not yet." His answer was calm, almost gentle. The room exchanged uneasy glances. That was not the response anyone expected from a man whose reputation had been built on discipline and precision. Victoria tapped the screen. Her thumb hesitated for only a heartbeat before pressing play. She walked toward the center of the conference table and carefully placed the phone where everyone could see. The recording had no dramatic soundtrack, no narration, only the quiet security camera footage from the executive hallway outside the boardroom. The timestamp read, 9:28 in the morning, less than 1 minute earlier. Several directors leaned forward. The hallway appeared ordinary. Employees walked past carrying coffee. An assistant hurried toward the elevators with a stack of folders. Nothing seemed unusual. Then another figure entered the frame. A little girl. She could not have been more than 7 years old. She wore a pale blue sweater, small white sneakers, and a tiny backpack decorated with hand-painted butterflies. She stood near the reception desk, clutching a folded sheet of paper against her chest. One executive frowned. "Who is that?" Victoria answered without taking her eyes off the screen. "My daughter." The room fell silent again. The little girl looked around with innocent curiosity, clearly searching for someone. She smiled politely at a receptionist. She waited, patiently, almost proudly. Then the elevator doors opened. Several senior executives stepped into the hallway together, engaged in an intense discussion about the meeting that had not yet begun. They barely noticed the child. Most simply walked around her. One man, distracted by conversation and documents in his hands, changed direction without looking. The edge of his briefcase brushed against the folded drawing the little girl was holding. The paper slipped from her hands and floated gently onto the polished floor. She immediately bent down to pick it up. At the exact same moment, another executive turned the corner carrying a tray of coffee. Everything happened within seconds. The child startled. The tray tilted. Coffee splashed across expensive documents before landing harmlessly on the marble floor. The tray crashed loudly. Gasps echoed through the hallway. The little girl froze. Her shoulders became perfectly still. She looked frightened, not because anyone had been hurt, but because every adult I suddenly turned toward her. One executive threw both hands into the air with visible frustration. Another pointed toward the child while speaking words the security camera could not capture. Victoria lowered her head. I heard the voices before I reached the hallway. The recording continued. The little girl tried to explain something. She held up the drawing with trembling hands. No one accepted it. No one knelt beside her. No one asked if she was all right. Instead, several people continued speaking over one another, their expressions growing sharper with every passing second. David watched without blinking. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The room remained completely silent. Then the video showed the boardroom doors opening. David Sinclair stepped into view for the very first time. He had just arrived from another elevator. He had not witnessed what came before. Victoria inhaled slowly. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. When I turned the corner, that was the first person I saw. She closed her eyes for a brief moment. I believed he was the one who had frightened my daughter. No one spoke, not even the executives who, only moments earlier, had demanded that she be removed. Because for the first time since she entered the room, everyone understood that the story had begun long before the boardroom door ever opened. The final frame of the recording lingered on the screen. David stood in the hallway, having arrived only seconds after everything had unfolded. His expression revealed nothing except surprise as Victoria rushed toward the boardroom doors. The recording ended before anyone inside could see what happened next. The screen turned black. No one reached for the phone. No one reached for the conference room remote. Silence had become the loudest voice in the building. Victoria slowly picked up her phone and held it close to her chest. I was wrong, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. I saw my daughter crying. I saw frightened faces. I saw people pointing. When I looked up, Mr. Sinclair was the first person standing there. She swallowed carefully. I believed he had caused it. Across the room, several board members lowered their eyes. Only minutes earlier, they had been ready to remove her without listening. Now uncertainty settled over every face. One director finally cleared his throat. Even if that was a misunderstanding, he said cautiously, this is still an executive board meeting. Victoria nodded. I know. I already understand there will be consequences. Her answer carried no anger, no excuses, only honesty. David rested both hands on the polished table. Victoria. It was the first time he had spoken her name. She looked toward him. How did your daughter get onto the executive floor? A faint sadness crossed her face. She is home from school this week. I could not find anyone to watch her this morning. My babysitter called 30 minutes before work and said she had the flu. I could not miss another shift. A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Victoria continued quietly. I work in the accounting department. I asked the receptionist if my daughter could sit outside for 15 minutes while I delivered the quarterly audit package. I thought she would be safe. She looked down at the folded drawing now resting beside her phone. She wanted to surprise me. David noticed the colorful paper for the first time. What is that? Victoria carefully unfolded it. The crayons had left bright streaks of blue, yellow, and green across ordinary printer paper. It showed a woman holding the hand of a little girl beneath an oversized sun. Above them, written in careful block letters, were the words, "My mom is my hero." Victoria smiled through moist eyes. She made it before breakfast. She wanted me to hang it beside my desk. No one spoke. The drawing suddenly seemed more valuable than every financial report spread across the conference table. David looked toward the board members. Who was in the hallway before I arrived? Several executives glanced toward one another. No one answered immediately. Then an older vice president slowly raised his hand. I was. So was I, another admitted. Within seconds, 5 members acknowledged they had witnessed at least part of what happened. David remained calm. I have one question. His voice was neither cold nor accusatory. When that little girl became frightened, he paused. Who comforted her? The room fell completely still. One executive looked toward the windows. Another quietly adjusted his glasses. Someone shifted uneasily in a leather chair. No answer came, because there was none. David lowered his eyes for a brief moment. When he spoke again, his voice had become quieter. Then we have a much larger problem than a misunderstanding. Every person in the room instinctively knew he was no longer talking about the interrupted board meeting. He was talking about the culture inside his company. And for the first time that morning, the quarterly numbers no longer seemed like the most important item on the agenda. No one returned to their seat. The quarterly reports remained open, untouched, as though the numbers had suddenly lost their meaning. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago continued its ordinary morning. Traffic flowed. Trains crossed the river. Thousands of people hurried to work, unaware that inside Sinclair Dynamics, something far more important than profits had just come to light. David broke the silence. Where is your daughter now? Victoria looked toward the conference room doors. She is with the receptionist. I asked her to stay there until I knew everything was all right. David gave a slight nod. Bring her here. One security officer hesitated. Sir, into the boardroom? Yes. His answer left no room for debate. Less than 2 minutes later, the doors opened quietly. A small girl stepped inside, holding the drawing carefully against her sweater as though it might tear if she squeezed it too tightly. She paused the moment she saw so many adults looking at her. Her bright blue eyes searched the room until they found Victoria. Mom! Victoria knelt immediately, opening her arms. The little girl hurried across the polished floor and wrapped herself around her mother without saying another word. Victoria gently kissed the top of her daughter's head. It is all right, sweetheart. You are safe. The child nodded, but she did not let go. David watched them for several quiet seconds. He noticed the little girl's backpack. One strap had slipped from her shoulder. A tiny butterfly keychain swung gently with every breath she took. She looked exactly like any other 7-year-old child. Small, hopeful, completely out of place inside a room built for billion-dollar decisions. David slowly walked around the conference table. His polished shoes echoed softly across the hardwood floor. When he stopped a few feet away, he lowered himself onto one knee so that his eyes met the child's without towering above her. My name is David. His voice carried the same calm warmth it always had. I am sorry your morning became so frightening. The little girl studied him carefully. Children often notice sincerity long before adults did. After a few seconds, she gave a tiny nod. "I did not mean to spill anything." Her voice was almost a whisper. "I just wanted to pick up my picture." David smiled gently. "I know. You were trying to protect something important." She looked down at the drawing. "It was for Mommy. I wanted everyone to know she works very hard." Victoria quietly wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. Around the room, several executives shifted uncomfortably. The words of a child carried more weight than any prepared presentation. David looked back toward the board. "I would like every person who was in that hallway to remember this moment." His tone remained measured. "We are discussing a child who apologized before any adult thought to comfort her." No one argued. No one even attempted to defend themselves. The truth required no debate. David turned to the receptionist standing near the doorway. "Would you please stay with our young guest for a few minutes?" The receptionist smiled kindly. "I would be happy to." The little girl looked up at her mother. "Will you be okay?" Victoria gently brushed a loose strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "I will. I promise." The child finally released her embrace and walked beside the receptionist, turning once before leaving the room. She lifted the drawing with a shy smile. "I still want to hang it by your desk." Victoria smiled back. "I cannot wait." The doors closed softly. Another long silence settled across the room. David returned to the head of the table, but he did not sit. Instead, he folded his hands and looked at each director one by one. This meeting is no longer about quarterly earnings. It is about who we have become. For the first time in many years, every executive understood that the hardest questions waiting inside that boardroom would not be answered by spreadsheets. They would be answered by conscience. The conference room felt different now. Not quieter, more honest. The polished table still reflected the morning light, but the confidence that had filled the room less than 20 minutes earlier had quietly disappeared. David rested one hand on the back of his chair. "I want every hallway camera from this floor." The director of corporate security nodded immediately. "I can have them ready in 5 minutes. I would like them now." There was no edge in David's voice, only certainty. The request was enough to make several executives exchange nervous glances. A large display on the conference room wall switched from financial charts to the building's security system. Different camera angles appeared one after another. Reception, the executive hallway, the elevator lobby, the corridor leading toward human resources. David folded his arms. "Play everything from 9:15 until 9:30. The recordings unfolded quietly. Employees greeted one another. Maintenance workers polished the marble floor. Assistants hurried between offices carrying folders and coffee. Ordinary moments. Real moments. Then Victoria entered the building with her daughter. She held one small hand while balancing a laptop bag on her shoulder. The little girl smiled at almost everyone she passed. Some smiled back. Others never looked up from their phones. David noticed something almost immediately. Victoria stopped twice to help other people. First, she picked up a stack of papers an elderly employee accidentally dropped near the lobby entrance. She smiled. She wished him a good morning. Then she paused again to hold the elevator doors open for a mail carrier pushing a heavy cart. She never appeared rushed, even though she clearly was. One board member quietly whispered, "I have seen her before." Another nodded. "Accounting. Always the first one here." David said nothing. The next recording began. Victoria reached the reception desk. She spoke politely with the receptionist while kneeling beside her daughter. The little girl listened carefully as her mother explained something. Then Victoria gently brushed her daughter's hair behind one ear before walking toward the accounting offices with the audit package. The child remained seated exactly where she had been asked to wait. She never wandered. She never disturbed anyone. She simply colored another butterfly beside the bright yellow sun on her drawing. Nearly 7 minutes passed. People walked by. Most ignored her. One woman smiled kindly before continuing toward the elevators. Then another camera angle appeared. The boardroom hallway. The executives leaving a private strategy session. Conversations overlapped. Several people checked messages while walking. No one seemed intentionally unkind. They simply seemed distracted. The little girl noticed someone drop a leather notebook near the elevator. Without hesitation, she picked it up. She hurried after the group with small, careful steps. "Excuse me." Her voice was too soft. No one heard. She tried again. "Sir." The executive finally turned around. As he reached for the notebook, another colleague accidentally bumped his elbow. The notebook slipped. The child instinctively bent to retrieve it again. At that same instant, the tray of coffee passed nearby. Everything unfolded exactly as they had already seen. An unfortunate accident. Nothing more. David watched the recording without blinking. When it ended, he slowly looked around the room. "My daughter is 22 now." The unexpected sentence caught everyone by surprise. "When she was 7. A gentle smile briefly crossed his face. She believed every adult would help her if she asked. The smile disappeared. "I hope she still believes that." Nobody spoke. David stepped closer to the conference table. Victoria's daughter saw a notebook on the floor. She was trying to return something that did not belong to her. He paused. Kindness placed her in the middle of an accident. His eyes settled on the directors seated around him. "The accident is understandable. Our response is what concerns me." He looked toward the human resources director. "I want to know why an employee believed she had no choice but to bring her child to work." Then he turned toward the chief financial officer. "I want to know how many emergency family support requests have been denied during the past 12 months. Finally, he looked toward Victoria. "You came here expecting to lose your job today." She nodded honestly. "Yes." David answered with quiet conviction. "I think we have been asking the wrong person to explain herself." The human resources director opened her laptop with noticeably unsteady hands. "I can answer that, Mr. Sinclair." Every eye in the room shifted toward her. She took a careful breath before speaking. Over the past 12 months, 83 employees submitted emergency family accommodation requests. She paused. Only 11 were approved. The room became still again. David did not interrupt. "What happened to the other 72? The human resources director glanced toward the chief operations officer before lowering her eyes. "Our department was instructed to tighten attendance policies. Requests involving children, aging parents, or temporary caregivers were considered. Operational risks." No one needed further explanation. The words themselves sounded colder than anyone intended. David slowly turned his attention toward the chief operations officer. "Was that your policy?" The executive adjusted his tie. "It was intended to improve productivity. Our data showed attendance issues affecting quarterly performance." David remained expressionless. "And who approved the policy?" A long silence followed. Finally, the executive answered. "I did." Victoria stood quietly near the conference table. She had expected questions about her own actions. Instead, the conversation had uncovered something much larger than one difficult morning. David looked toward her. "Did you ever request flexible scheduling?" Victoria nodded. "Twice." "What happened?" "The first request was denied because month-end reporting was approaching." She spoke without resentment. "The second request was denied because my attendance record might set the wrong precedent." Several directors quietly lowered their heads. Victoria continued. "I understood the company's position. I simply tried to find another solution." She smiled faintly. "My daughter usually stays with my neighbor before school. This morning she became sick. I did not have family nearby. I believed I could finish one delivery in less than 15 minutes. She looked toward the closed boardroom doors. "I truly believed she would be safe." David walked slowly toward the windows overlooking the city. For a long moment, he simply watched the traffic moving far below. Then he spoke without turning around. "My grandfather started this company with 12 employees. He often said that businesses do not fail because they lose money. They fail when they stop seeing people." His reflection appeared faintly against the glass. "I promised myself I would never forget that lesson." He closed his eyes briefly. "Somewhere along the way, I did." The confession surprised everyone. No one had ever heard David Sinclair admit personal failure inside a boardroom. He turned back toward the directors. "This policy may have improved attendance reports. It also taught good people that asking for help was dangerous." No one challenged him, because the evidence was already sitting inside the room. A mother, a frightened child, a misunderstanding that never should have happened. David returned to the head of the table. His voice remained calm. Effective immediately, every family accommodation request denied during the past 12 months will be reviewed again. He looked toward human resources. I want recommendations on my desk within 72 hours. Personally reviewed. The human resources director nodded. Yes, sir. David then faced Victoria. I cannot change what happened this morning. His voice softened. But I can make certain another parent never feels they must choose between protecting their child and protecting their job. Victoria felt her eyes fill once more. For the first time since walking into the boardroom, those tears did not come from fear. They came from relief. Around the conference table, the executives no longer saw an interruption. They saw a mirror, and every reflection inside it asked the same uncomfortable question. How many quiet acts of kindness had gone unnoticed, simply because no one with power had taken the time to look? The boardroom meeting officially ended. No one applauded. No one hurried toward the elevators. For several long moments, people simply remained where they were, quietly absorbing everything that had unfolded during the past hour. David gathered the untouched financial reports into a neat stack. Then he closed the folder without opening a single page. The earnings can wait until tomorrow. His voice was steady. Our values cannot. The directors slowly stood. Several approached Victoria, each carrying a different expression than the one they had worn when she first entered the room. An older board member stopped a respectful distance away. I owe you an apology. Victoria looked surprised. You walked into this room expecting judgment. We gave it to you before we knew the truth. He lowered his head slightly. I am sorry. She answered with the same quiet grace she had shown all morning. Thank you. Another executive stepped forward. I was in that hallway. I saw your daughter. I should have stopped. His words came slowly, weighed down by regret. I convinced myself someone else would. Victoria offered a gentle smile. We all miss moments. What matters is what we choose after we recognize them. The simple sentence settled over the room more powerfully than any accusation could have. David noticed it too. Strength, he realized, did not always sound loud. Sometimes it sounded like forgiveness. The receptionist quietly returned with Victoria's daughter. The little girl skipped happily toward her mother, holding a small paper cup of apple juice with both hands. I made a new picture. She proudly held up another drawing. This one showed a tall office building beneath a bright blue sky. Several smiling people stood in front of it, holding hands. One of them wore a necktie. Another carried a butterfly backpack. Above them, written in careful handwriting, were 5 simple words. Kind people make safe places. The boardroom became silent once again. David accepted the drawing carefully, almost as though it were something fragile. May I keep this for a little while? The little girl smiled. If you promise to give it back. I promise. She nodded with complete confidence. Children often believed promises without hesitation. Adults usually earned that privilege. David turned toward his executive assistant. I would like this drawing framed. The assistant blinked. For your office, sir? No. He looked around the boardroom. I want it hanging outside this room. Several directors looked surprised. David continued. So every person who enters here remembers exactly who our decisions are meant to serve. No one questioned the request. It made perfect sense. Before leaving, Victoria reached into her canvas bag once more. She carefully removed her employee identification badge. I suppose you will need this. She placed it gently on the conference table. David looked at the badge, then back at her. Why would I? Victoria hesitated. I interrupted the board meeting. I misunderstood what happened. I struck the chief executive officer. I cannot imagine there is a policy for surviving a morning like this. For the first time that day, a few quiet smiles appeared around the room. David picked up the badge. Instead of placing it aside, he walked toward Victoria and clipped it back onto her cardigan himself. There is no policy. He smiled gently. But there is judgment. And mine is that a woman willing to protect her daughter, admit her mistake, and tell the truth deserves respect, not dismissal. Victoria could not find words. She simply nodded. As she took her daughter's hand and walked toward the door, every person in the room instinctively stepped aside, creating a clear path. Not because she held power, but because she had quietly reminded every one of them what real courage looked like. 3 weeks passed. Spring sunlight slowly replaced the gray mornings that had settled over Chicago for months. Inside Sinclair Dynamics, subtle changes began appearing where polished mission statements once hung unnoticed. Flexible family rooms opened on every corporate floor. Emergency child care partnerships were announced. Managers attended new leadership workshops with a single phrase displayed on every presentation screen: people before process. Most employees assumed the changes came from months of strategic planning. Only a handful of people knew they had begun with a little girl carrying a drawing covered in butterflies. Victoria returned to work the following Monday. She expected whispers. She expected curious looks. Instead, she found something entirely different. People smiled. The receptionist greeted her daughter by name. The maintenance supervisor waved as they walked through the lobby. Even the security officers who had stopped her outside the boardroom now greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Miss Hughes." Her daughter smiled proudly. "They remember us." Victoria squeezed her small hand. Kindness is easy to remember. Later that afternoon, Victoria received an unexpected message. "Mr. Sinclair would like to see you." No urgency, no explanation, only an invitation. She quietly knocked on the office door overlooking the city. "Come in." David stood beside the windows holding a framed picture. It was the drawing, the one that read, "Kind people make safe places." "It looks different in a frame," Victoria said with a small smile. "It does." David placed it carefully on a shelf behind his desk. "It reminds me to ask better questions." He motioned toward the chair across from him. "I wanted to thank you." Victoria looked surprised. "I believe I should be thanking you." He shook his head gently. "No, you apologize for one misunderstanding. I had to face an entire culture that had quietly drifted away from what this company was meant to be." He looked toward the skyline. "We measure almost everything: revenue, growth, productivity." He paused. "But we almost never measure whether people feel safe asking for help." Victoria listened quietly. "There are many parents here," she said. "Most of them never tell anyone how close they come to falling apart." David nodded slowly. "I know that now." He opened a folder resting on his desk. "I have another request." Victoria's expression became uncertain. "I am not offering you a promotion." She blinked. "I am offering you something more important." He slid a single page across the desk. At the top it read, "Employee Family Advisory Council." "I want this council led by employees, not executives, not consultants, people who understand real life." Victoria looked at the document, then back at David. "I have never managed anything like this." "I know." He smiled. "That is exactly why I trust you." Silence settled comfortably between them. Not awkward, not uncertain, simply peaceful. Before Victoria could answer, there was a gentle knock on the office door. Her daughter peeked inside, holding another drawing. "I made one for you too." David accepted it with both hands. This drawing showed a tall man kneeling to speak with a little girl. Above them floated one sentence in bright green crayon: "Good people listen first." David laughed softly, not because it was funny, because it was true. He looked toward Victoria. "I think your daughter has become the wisest consultant this company has ever hired." The little girl giggled. "I only tell the truth." David carefully placed the second drawing beside the first. Two simple pictures, drawn with inexpensive crayons. Yet together, they had changed conversations that billion-dollar reports never could. Sometimes the greatest transformation inside a company does not begin with a brilliant strategy. Sometimes it begins when one child reminds every adult what kindness is supposed to look like. 1 year later, autumn painted Chicago in warm shades of gold and amber. The trees outside Sinclair Dynamics swayed gently beneath a clear October sky, while employees gathered in the company atrium for an annual meeting, unlike any the organization had ever held before. There were no giant screens displaying record profits, No charts comparing quarterly growth. No speeches celebrating market share. Instead, a simple banner hung above the stage. Leadership begins with humanity. Near the front row sat David Sinclair. Not on the stage. Not behind a podium. Simply among his employees. He applauded as others entered, greeting people by name instead of title. The company had changed. Not because every problem had disappeared, but because people no longer feared admitting they needed help. Flexible schedules had become ordinary. Emergency family leave no longer required impossible explanations. Parents no longer whispered about childcare in break rooms. They spoke openly, without shame. When the lights softened, the master of ceremonies smiled. Our final speaker today is someone many of you already know. Director of the Employee Family Advisory Council, Victoria Hughes. The applause arrived immediately. Warm, genuine. Victoria walked onto the stage with the same quiet grace she had always carried. She wore a simple navy dress, comfortable shoes, and the same silver necklace she had worn on the morning that changed everything. She looked across the audience. More than 1,000 employees looked back. For a moment she simply smiled. I never imagined standing here. A few quiet laughs drifted through the room. A year ago, I walked into this building believing I was about to lose everything. She paused. Instead, I found something I did not expect. People willing to grow. The audience listened carefully. I have learned that courage does not belong only to the person who speaks. It also belongs to the person willing to listen. Several employees nodded. Victoria looked toward David. He returned the smile with quiet respect. My daughter once believed every adult would help if she asked. I hope she never loses that belief. She folded her notes. I know I never will. The room rose to its feet. Not because of polished words, because they recognized the truth inside them. As the applause continued, a familiar little voice echoed from the front row. Mom! Victoria laughed softly. Her daughter hurried onto the stage carrying one last drawing. Now 8 years old, she had grown a little taller, but her smile remained exactly the same. I made this for everybody. Victoria unfolded the picture. It showed a large office building filled with open windows. Inside every window stood people helping one another. At the very top, beneath a bright morning sun, the child had written one final sentence. The best companies protect hearts too. A gentle hush settled across the atrium. David stood. He began applauding first. Then every employee joined him. The sound filled the building far longer than any financial announcement ever had. Later that afternoon, the drawing found its place beside the other two outside the executive boardroom. Employees paused to look at them every day. New hires often asked about the pictures. Veteran employees simply smiled. They knew the story. Not as a tale about a misunderstanding. Not as a story about a board meeting. Not even as the story of a billionaire and a single mother. It became the story of what happened when people finally chose to see one another before judging one another. Because power may open doors. Success may build skyscrapers. But kindness is what makes people feel safe enough to walk through those doors together. And sometimes the greatest legacy a leader leaves behind is not measured in dollars. It is measured in the number of people who leave work believing they mattered.